welcome back. This week is Challah Bread. It happens to be a very particularly special Saturday for our family. It happens to be Passover weekend and Palm Sunday and my daughter's first birthday. So it's actually going to be a pretty quick video. I hope you guys enjoy it and try it and aren't overly intimidated by it. Enjoy. Bye. All right, you guys know the drill. The first thing that we do is assemble all of our ingredients. So the first thing you're going to need is some bread flour. I've used unbleached flour, but you can use the regular kind. It doesn't really matter. So long as it has more gluten than all-purpose, you're good. You'll also need some salt for seasoning and yeast as the leavener for this recipe. You'll also need something to feed your yeast so it can bloom and grow. And I've used sugar in this recipe, but it can also just as easily be replaced with honey. It's generally used as an alternative for sugar when it comes to challah bread. So I'll put somewhere in the description below how to replace it for them. You'll also need some sort of vegetable oil. I've used canola and some eggs since it is an egg-enriched loaf. You'll also need some warm water. You'll see that I don't have much in the way of utensils out, and that's because for this recipe, I thought I would show you guys how to actually do it all by hand. That's right, folks. I'm not using the standing mixer for this or the food processor, but like I've said in videos before, use what you got, use what you're comfortable with. I just thought I'd show you guys a video where I did that myself. Also in this recipe, I decided to measure everything out in US measurements to make things easier for you guys. You're welcome. So, without further ado, let's go over the amounts that you're going to need. Now, when it comes to the flour, you're going to need 4 cups sifted. That means very loosely spoon in your flour into your cup measurement and only measure out 4 cups. If you do more, you will get a much, much denser loaf, and that's not what you want with challah. You'll see that I also put in 1/4 cup of sugar and 1/2 tablespoon of salt. And I didn't put those together because the sugar is going to feed the yeast. And the yeast, you're going to need 1 tablespoon and 1/4 teaspoon. And I mix that up by hand because I'm not getting 15 things dirty. Yay! Ignore my weirdness, guys. Anyway, this is an egg-enriched loaf. So to help the yeast out, to rise a little bit better with such dense ingredients, we're going to warm up the water just a little bit. 1 cup and 1 tablespoon's worth of water. And I just put that in the microwave for 30, 45 seconds at the most. And I've got a mini tiny little microwave, so keep that in mind. You don't want it burning scalding hot. Like I said, this is an enriched dough, so you're going to add 2 eggs. I crack mine before I put them in. Like I've mentioned before, I don't want to fish out eggshells out of the floury bit, but I mean, you want to risk it, go for it. I don't whisk this before I put it in, guys. I'm just not a fan of using extra utensils for absolutely no reason. We're going to mix this in 2 seconds anyway. So, yeah. And then you're also going to add 1/3 cup of canola oil or vegetable oil, like I said, whatever you have on hand. And then to that, you add your water. We're trying to get anywhere between 120 to 125 degrees Fahrenheit. But if you don't want to get a candy thermometer out, or you don't have one, you're wanting something a little bit warmer than body temperature, but not so hot you feel like you're boiling your skin alive. So you add all your wet ingredients and then just mix. And you're going to mix this until you get a slacky dough, or until all the ingredients really come together. It's going to look very lumpy and sticky and not 100% mixed together, but that's okay. You can finish mixing it and kneading it on the actual work surface. It's really whatever you're most comfortable with. You can really knead it into the
bowl itself, but I find it more comfortable to just get it mainly incorporated in the bowl and then toss it or turn it over onto my work surface. Also, have your bag of flour close at hand so that you can spoon out a little bit of flour onto the work surface whenever you might need it. I had to go and get mine with very messy hands, and it's not recommended. So yeah, as soon as you get it to about this kind of consistency, you can turn it onto your work surface and really start to gather it. You can see that mine is just a little stickier than I would like. I just wanted to be as conservative as possible. And yeah, add flour later rather than regret that I had added too much flour before. So you're going to knead this on your work surface for 10 minutes. I set a timer with my, smart home devices, and then I listen to the news, or I watch some TV, or I sing a song or pray. Do whatever you're comfortable with, but 10 minutes goes by startlingly fast. I'm just going to say that. Instead of putting the full 10 minutes on here, I sped it up to twice the speed. So if you really want to watch it, you are more than welcome to. And if not, you can essentially speed this video up, or not speed it up, but move forward 5 minutes, and that's when I'm done kneading. But if not, you can totally see where I see it sticking, how I deal with stickiness, and exactly how I knead it together to form the smooth ball that it transforms into. So it's going to be a quiet couple of minutes, guys. See you soon. Hey guys, so we are back, and as you can see, it's been 10 minutes and the dough is nice and soft and smooth on the top, and really that's just from working the gluten until it's gotten to a nice consistency. But working it for that long, it's going to need some resting. But you can see it's not sticky anymore, it's just a little bit tacky. And that's the kind of softness that you're going for. So I'm going to take my bowl and wash it out and use the exact same bowl that I worked in and put a little bit of the same oil that I used, canola for me, or whatever kind of vegetable oil you use at home. And I'm going to coat the inside in. I used way too much. Really, it doesn't take much, just a dot, not a lot. That was way more than a lot. But I mean, whatever you want to do. But yeah, so that's just so that the dough doesn't stick to the inside of the bowl. But so long as you get it on the bottom, you're fine. And then I put the top side down. I coat that in some oil and the sides, and then I flip it over. And once it's all completely coated in that oil and sitting in the oiled bowl, I cover it just with a regular tea towel and set it off to the side to rise for 2 hours. And if you're in a cold climate, you're going to want to keep it in a slightly warmer place, but you really don't want to heat up the dough. You just want it to stay fairly warm. And after 2 hours, it will have hopefully doubled in size. And you'll know when it's done because after 2 hours, if you poke it, it's not going to deflate, but it's not going to bounce back. You can see that it leaves that indentation in there. So this is nice and pillowy and ready to go. At this point, we're just going to put it on our work surface and deflate it. I probably should have toweled off a bit of that excess oil, and I didn't. It gave me a little bit of trouble, but, you know, I survived. So will you. Or you can towel it off. Either way. But the point is, you want to deflate it and then section it off into your pieces. Now, I made a 6-stranded plaid or braid, but you can make a 4-plaid, a 5-plaid, a 3-plaid, a 12. I really don't care what size braid you make. I wanted to try the 6-stranded braid but you can do whatever you're comfortable with doing. By all means, do not feel like it's required. Now, if you're going to make 2 loaves, then you do want to section it off into 6 pieces. You're going to use 3 strands for one braid and 3 strands for another braid. And then you'll have 2 smaller loaves. But again, it's entirely up to you and how you're making this dough. I also rolled them up into balls, and I feel like that was a mistake in hindsight, because it just made the gluten that much tougher to roll out. So save yourself a lot of heartache, and don't be like me. Don't roll them up into balls beforehand. Just take the pieces that you've cut and start working them into a rope of some kind. You can just smush it all into a general size. Now you see I have sped this up to twice the speed. That way you could see me rolling it out. I'm trying to get them first to at least about 10 to 14 inches. I cover it as I'm going, that way they don't dry out. But with as much oil as they still had on them, that wasn't a huge deal either. If they're sticking to the board, you can always flour as well, but that was not my issue. My issue was too much oil. So I was prepared for whatever eventuality. You should be too. And just cover it so that they don't dry out as you go, as a precaution. So after I get them to about 10 to 14 inches, I'm then going to re-roll them out to my total length, which is about 20 to 24 inches in length. And that really long length is what gives you a nice dough. Now remember, when you're braiding, that length is actually going to decrease quite a bit. So if you leave them too chunky and too thick and too short, then you're just not going to get a decent braid, and you're just going to end up with this big oblong circle type dough. And if that's what you're going for, then by all means, go for that. But I am specifically trying to do the traditional challah braid. So yeah, just look up your favorite braid. There are so many videos out there. I'm not actually going to show it just because I'm terrible at explaining how to do it. It's one of those things where you can't talk and cut at the same time. Same thing with braiding. I cannot braid and explain it. But there are plenty of people out there that do, and they have much faster videos, and you can learn how to do a 3-strand or 4-strand or really whatever size you want. Before I ever started braiding dough, I would practice with pairs of leggings, of all things. And I would just practice, a 6-stranded braid with 3 pairs of leggings, and I'd interlace them and figure out how to do it. Do what works for you guys. So in a minute, it's going to zoom past all of this, and you'll see what it looked like as a finished product. But again, I used all of the dough for one big loaf. So if you've got 2 smaller loaves, it's going to look just a tiny bit different. And that's okay too. But yeah, once you've actually braided it all up, there's a very special technique for sealing the ends. That way the braids don't come apart. And I'll show you that as soon as it comes up. It should be here in a couple seconds because I think I've got all of it. Yeah. So this is my 6-stranded braid. I made an entire mess of it, but whatever. So you kind of pinch the ends together and you roll them into a point, and then you just tuck that point in underneath. And that's what helps seal the braid, and it won't come apart as it bakes. So now that it is all braided and ready to go, nice and pillowy and beautiful, I'm going to put it on a baking sheet that I've lined with parchment paper. And you can bake this without the parchment paper, I generally like to do that just as a safety precaution in case it bakes onto my baking sheet, and I happen to have one that I'd already baked something else on, and I reuse them as much as I can. I think the company says that you can use them 2 or 3 times over, and I try to do that as much as I possibly can. So I already had it on hand, guys. So you're going to crack an egg and whisk it together. You kind of want it as best incorporated as possible, just so you don't get whites or yolks in sections on top of the bread. And this is just for an egg wash. So you want to beat it fairly nicely. I have a pastry brush, and that's what I use to glaze the bread with, or brush the bread with. But if you don't have one, you can always use just 2 or 3 fingers, and you dip it in the egg and gently coat the surface. And you're going to coat the entire braid as much as possible in all the creases, in all of the shiny domey parts. Everything gets a nice generous helping to this egg wash. This egg wash is what's going to take this bread from to wow, because it really does brown up very nicely in the oven. I suppose I should mention that the recipe is actually meant for you to put this egg wash on immediately before you put it in the oven, after it's already preheated. But I don't always have that option. I have kids, I have a life, I have other things that I do in the kitchen. So when my oven is preheating and I happen to have a chance, I immediately go and egg wash my challah. But it is entirely up to you and the kind of time that you have on hand. So go ahead and preheat your oven to 325, and you are going to bake this for about 15 to 20 minutes on the first side, and then 15 to 20 minutes on the second side. And really the last 5 minutes is when you kind of want to peek at it and make sure that it isn't completely burning. But like I said, don't be misguided by the dark, rich brown of the glaze into thinking that, oh, it's clearly overdone, because that's where all the rich flavor is really at. But yeah, it's going to rise and dome and get this gorgeous shape and color, and you'll see that in a minute when I pop it out of the oven. But yeah, this bread is great for family time. It's delicious once it's started to get a little stale. You cut it up and use it for French bread. Oh my gosh, bread pudding. Because of the richness of the eggs in this dough, it really makes this the perfect bread for just about anything. I just think people don't try it because they're intimidated by the braid. But really, you don't have to make the braid overcomplicated to have great challah. So by all means, try it, guys. It's absolutely delicious. I hope you can have some for Good Friday or for Passover. They happen to be at the same time this year, or just for a regular evening with your family. And you'll see me in a second pull it out and tap the bottom. You really don't have to do that, but I like to test my bread to make sure that it's absolutely done cooking. And if not, I just pop it back in the oven for another maybe 5 minutes. But yeah, guys, this is it. Enjoy your challah. Enjoy your holidays. Enjoy your family time while you have it. Love you guys. See you soon. Bye.